Well, I'm really privileged to have with me Jim Sanders. Jim, you're the Executive Vice President of Ambassador Advertising. And I have to say, one, I love the name. You know, the truth is that we as Christians have all been given that title for God. We're ambassadors for God, as if we're appealing to the world, be reconciled to God. You know, that's such a privilege. And, you know, you guys are an organization that really has focused on that for how many years have you guys?
It was founded in 1959, and then about 35 years ago, my sister and I took over the operation. My folks sold us the company and moved to Oregon, and God's blessing has been beyond anything I could have imagined in between. We started a satellite delivery company called Amboss, and it's clear, based on who I am and who we are, that God's hand was in it every step of the way.
Yeah,
and that's been true since 1959.
Now, would it be an overstatement to say that your parents really were pioneers in advertising and Christian broadcast?
I hesitate to say yes, but if I was an objective third party, I'd say yes. Because Dad was the one who determined that you could take a Sunday sermon and split it in half, and that was Chuck Swindoll's ministry. We attended the Fullerton Evangelical Free Church, and that launched Insight for Living, and along came a plethora of other ministries who wanted to do similar.
Once the pathway was there were an awful lot of folks that followed in that.
That's right.
And so you guys have really been a blessing too, had a hand in really quite a number of Christian broadcasting. Is that true?
It is, and again, not by our design. I remember early on people talking about you need a 5-year plan. I thought, 5-year? I'd just like to make it through the end of the day. But as the Lord led us and we sought His wisdom and insight, He brought ministries our way, a focus on the family with Dr. Dobson, Grace to You with John MacArthur, and a number of others who have been our privilege, and still is our privilege, to represent.
And where did this 1 minute idea, the feature thing, how did that come about?
You know, I don't recall specifically, except to say that the longer form programs needed access to other stations and day parts that could use a bite of material that wouldn't consume a great deal of time. And part of the reason why we pursued it was we don't pay for airtime as many of the long form programmers do. It's all placed free of charge. So if you've counted the value of that airtime, it's massive over the course of a year.
And frankly, it couldn't happen except for the Amboss system that you guys created to deliver that content. So stations often don't even have to touch things; they just get fed into the system. But you guys made that process viable, I guess, would be the.
That was the hand of God again. We were delivering satellite content in real time, so every 1 minute of programming required a minute of airtime on the satellite. And this system said, no, we can send it digitally in a greater than normal speed. And we created a satellite receiver, and it's just been incredible. We have about 130 ministries who are using in about 210, 15 programs that we deliver via satellite, via Amboss, including your program.
Yeah, fantastic. Now, what a lot of folks watching this wouldn't know is I think you're the geek, the techie guy, right? I mean, you're a full card-carrying member of the Audio Engineering Society,
I am,
right?
That's true.
And so, you know, the technical aspect is something you really enjoy, right?
I do, and I think that was part of God's plan as well, to lean me in that direction and be able to sit in a room full of engineers and actually understand what they said. And be able to say that's a good idea, that may not be. So I'm not intending to take credit for the whole system, because we have a wonderful team of real engineers who have helped develop it, and it's really grown dramatically in the last 15 years.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, you know, I really met you through Rich Bott and this original idea that he had that we should have a daily feature called, you know, Share Life Today, where we encourage Christians to witness. And I can remember to this day Jim approaching you and talking to you, and you were so encouraging. And then coming out to your offices in California and having you work with me to try to come up with what this might sound like. And, you know, honestly, you have such a beautiful heart. You know, you'd make me cry as we would start thinking about going through these things. And, you know, we tried for a couple of years to figure out how not to do this before we figured out how to do it. And but my question for you is, what stood out? I mean, you invested so much time into EE. What stood out with EE and with this creation of Share Life Today? What potential did you see for the kingdom of God that would cause you to really stick with this and make this investment?
That's really easy, John, because we're always looking when someone is thinking about doing something for something that's unique in the marketplace. But that it's unique in the marketplace, which that is true for Share Life, but also that's the core part of our mission, to make disciples. This is our charge, and to do so in a bite-sized way. My problem when we first started meeting, and I remember where we were at Opryland Hotel upstairs over the lobby, and thinking, how do you do that in a minute? That's the real challenge. And of course, at that time, I didn't know what a brilliant communicator you are. And that now, with your help of Hannah, are able to put together these features that accomplish the goal, that are encouraging, that are uplifting, that point us to the Savior, and this mechanism that can be used to reach people. And I don't know if you remember, John, we had lunch one day, and just before we started eating, the server came over and dropped our lunch on our table. And you stopped down. I'm going to get a tear here. Whew. But you said, we're about to pray. Is there anything for which we can pray for you? And he visibly started shaking.
Yeah.
And he was overpowered by the emotion of what was going on in his brother or brother-in-law's life, facing a divorce, and you prayed for him, and I thought, okay, I'm sold. That's unbelievable. It was such a wonderful experience, not only to see that on a practical level, but to feel affirmed, yeah, this is the right place to spend your time and energy to make this work.
Now, the reason that you cry is that you care about that too.
Yeah.
And in fact, I think it's what makes the partnership work, is that, you know, what sort of, I mean, tell me about ambassador advertising. This is you guys' heart as well, right? And so we're joined at a heart level on something we both very much care about.
Well, 2 Corinthians 5:20 is where we get the name ambassador. We are therefore ambassadors for Christ. And I think that is applied in a number of ways. Certainly, we want them to know us by our love. We want to be a good representative of the Lord. But more importantly, as I mentioned, this is part of our mission. We can't be shy. We shouldn't be shy. Why wouldn't we be bold for Christ? And the thing I love about EE is making the process practical, to remove the fear and be able to apply it. Put the cookies on the bottom shelf and have anybody apply it.
Yeah, I've been so impressed with what I've seen with your staff and with your team. You know, everybody at Ambassador, you guys aren't just a Christian ministry that's making money off of Christian endeavor, right? Yeah. You know, some do that, and you know, why not? I guess this is a ministry for you all, right? You guys have staff members that go on mission trips all the time. You guys have. And you know, I've done devotions for your team and whatnot. I've stood in your racquetball court and sang hymns, and you know, even the other night you led us in a hymn sing. I mean, this is your ministry, really, right?
It absolutely is. We take that seriously and our responsibility before the Lord to steward our time. I can tell you that we, through the years, have had a lot of people approach us about doing something similar to EE. And we said no. In fact, the vast majority we say no, because we want it to be a good fit, someone who wants to increase the kingdom, to reach people who don't know Christ. And if we're going to steward our time, we want to do so in the maximum way. So it's been wonderful to do so with you all.
Yeah, amen. When you think about Christians that are equipped and that are actively sharing their faith and that are, like, what do you see happen in their lives when they become active in witnessing?
It is amazing, John. You know this far better than I, but from my distant observation point, is that it changes one's life forever. My wife and I were just talking about this last night as a result of her speaking with Hannah, that it reignites, if someone's not been reignited, their passion to share the gospel. Early on, when people come to Christ as an adult, they're very, not aggressive, but very forthright about reaching those who don't know the Lord. And I think over the course of the years, the tendency is for that to go away. But the process through EE reignites that, and it changes your view of what the Lord can do, of His sovereignty. I mentioned today in one of our programs here the fact that there are these divine serendipities. There are no chance meetings. And as I've watched you over and over and over again demonstrate how the Lord orchestrates, you would never imagine in a million years. And yet if you're obedient and take that first step and get past that fear you might have, the result is incredible.
Yeah, it's incredible. Somebody said something about this idea of divine appointments and whatnot, and that they had never experienced one, is what this person had said to me. And I was thinking about it, and to be honest with you, Jim, that's all we experience. I don't ever see that I create, in fact, I couldn't if I wanted to, create an environment where the gospel would be successful. Yeah. It's always through the hand of God and all that. Well, you and I share several things. We're both geeks, audio geeks and whatnot, but we also love radio, right?
Yeah.
There's been this, and anytime you can take something so important as sharing the gospel and then you can combine it with something that you love so much, why are you a radio guy?
Yeah.
Where did you fall in love with that?
Well, early on, I grew up in a home. We had a studio in our home where my dad was producing radio programs, so I learned that early on. But for me, there was something intriguing about wirelessly reaching someone who knows how far away. I remember listening to San Francisco station KCBS in Southern California at night, thinking, that's an amazing thing, these skywaves that allow us to hear distant places, and realizing that there's a massive audience that is reached only through the radio.
Yeah,
as that delivery system is changing, marketing strategies change, and it remains part of an important mix of means to deliver the content to consumers. But now we have streaming and apps and all the rest of that stuff, and those all work together to the end goal of reaching people and training them how to do the process of evangelism.
Charles Dickens says it's the best of times, it's the worst of times, and so many times we experience that thought, don't we? That I remember Dr. Kennedy one time standing on a bit of ground right outside of what is now Coral Ridge, and almost prophesying about the future, about these means of sharing the gospel that we've never even dreamed of. They didn't exist in the day when he first had this idea of basically a by all means and by any means. And yet you're living in a day when anyone's a broadcaster now.
That's right?
You can have a platform that reaches the ends of the earth. And so what are you excited about? What sort of advice would you give to a believer today who wants to have an impact?
Yeah, the ubiquity of equipment and delivery systems can be a good thing and a bad thing. It lets a lot of people enter the fray. But in the end, you still have to have content that is interesting, winsome, important, desirable, all those things that draw an audience. And I'll say, John, if I haven't already told you this, I love hearing you speak. You're such a great storyteller, and tell the message of the work of what EE is doing. I'm always moved when I hear you speak. And I think that aspect of who you are and what you do it puts you head and shoulders above anybody else who's in the same field. And I'm so grateful that the Lord's gifted you in that way. Anybody can do a podcast, and pretty much anybody does. But to do so in such a powerful way with practical information that's spiritually founded, that fulfills the Great Commission, is a pretty amazing thing.
Well, that's exciting. Thank you for the encouragement. But I can remember you helping me with that in the very beginning, and just continuing to, okay, that was okay, but let's try another take. Let's keep getting back to the heart of the matter. Well, thank you. I mean, I'm excited about these days ahead of us, about, people going to places that I've never dreamed of or thought of, and in languages that I can't speak, and in places I'll never go. I was thinking the other day, there were some pretty tragic things that happened in Congo, that are happening in Congo, but are. But, I got a message from a young man just the other day that's been trained in EE and has led over 100 people to Christ, and doesn't consider his life all that valuable, and is going to keep pouring it out until, something happens, God calls him home. But the point to it is this, and that is that, Dr. Kennedy originally wanted to be a missionary to the Congo. And because his health was such in those days, he was prohibited from going. Stuck him in a little church plant down in Fort Lauderdale that became Coral Ridge. And he was bummed out about that, to be honest. He wanted to go as a missionary.
Yeah.
But my point is, he never went, but he did go.
Yeah, right.
And because he had this ability to build into others. And so as we equip and train these new communicators that are going to go to places that, my prayer is that we'll raise up a generation that goes further, farther, faster. You figured out a way to really use or to harness the current media of the day. Who knows what these new people are.
I mentioned in a meeting today, John, that I love the quote from the new chairman of Home Depot, who, coming on board, met with all his senior staff. And they were all talking about how wonderful it used to be, how the glory days. And he said, when your memories exceed your dreams, the end is near. And I added the corollary, when your dreams exceed your memories, the future is bright.
Yeah.
And I see that in you. I see your vision and your desire to reach far beyond anything that we could ever do on a human basis, trusting that the Lord will lead and push us in the right direction. It's really a wonderful thing, and a privilege, a joy to work alongside you, John. I dearly love you, and I'm so grateful for your giftedness in storytelling. It's a wonderful thing to hear.
Well, thank you, Jim. It's a delight to work with you, brother.